I will ask for an approval of the agenda. Councillor Tom, Councillor Marakis, comments, questions about the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda, opposed, that carries. We'll do the declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Seeing none. We will begin then with our planning applications. And Madam Clerk, is this when I would give I'll just do a little introduction. First of all, the Mayor Daw is not here. I'm John Abel. I'm the Deputy Mayor. I'll be chairing. The Mayor is greeting delegates from Sweden. Let's Gand, Sweden is our twin municipality, and so they're there to officially greet them. Welcome to Aurora's public planning meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to inform the public and obtain public input regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendments and official plan amendment. No decisions will be made tonight on the applications in item 1 and 2. For each planning application that will be considered by Council tonight, the following process will occur. 1. Town planning staff will outline the purpose of the planning application being considered. 2. Then the applicant will be given an opportunity to make a presentation and address issues raised in the staff report or public concerns already filed. Following these presentations, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments or concerns respecting the proposal, and either town staff or the applicant will answer your questions. I will keep track of the questions, and when I have several, I will direct them to whoever can best answer them. Once we have heard from members of the public, I'll ask members of council if they have any questions or comments. It should also be noted that a comprehensive report will be prepared and presented to a future General Committee meeting, assessing the merits of the application before us and providing council with a recommendation for consideration. It is very important that the town receive the correct names and addresses of individuals having an interest in the planning applications. Therefore, if you plan to speak to council at this meeting, or you wish to be notified of any further council or committee meetings concerning the application being considered, you must complete one of the green interested party forms being held up. Thank you, Linda. And give it to our committee secretary sitting at the front, and that is Linda. Thank you. Under the Planning Act, the applicant or residents have the right to appeal any decision of council on a planning application to the Ontario Municipal Board. But you must verbally express any comments or concerns here tonight, or submit any comments or concerns in writing to the town prior to council adopting an amendment. The Ontario Municipal Board may dismiss all or part of an appeal made in respect of an application. This public meeting is being audio and video recorded. Your name, address, comments, and any other personal information are being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This will help our town clerk prepare accurate minutes and to create a record that is available to the general public, including the town website. Questions about this collection should be directed to the town clerk, Town of Aurora. I will now ask the Deputy Clerk to confirm that notification to the public occurred as required by the Planning Act.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Respecting item 1, application for zoning bylaw amendment, 15370 Leslie Scale Inc., 15370 Leslie Street, part of Lot 21, Concession 2, file number ZBA-2017-02, related file number SP-2017-02. On June 8, 2017, a notice of public planning meeting was published in the Auroran and Aurora Bend newspapers and given by mail to all addressed property owners within a minimum of 120 meters of the subject lands. A notice of public planning meeting sign was also posted on Leslie Street. Respecting item 2, applications for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, York Region Christian Seniors Home, Inc., 440, 460, 480, and 500 William Graham Drive, Plan 65M-4442, Block 4 and Block 5, file number OPA-2017-04, related file number ZBA-2016-12. On June 8, 2017, a notice of public planning meeting was published in the Auroran and Aurora Bend newspapers and given by mail to all addressed property owners within a minimum of 120 meters of the subject lands. A notice of public planning meeting sign was also posted on the subject lands fronting William Graham Drive. Public meeting notification has been provided in accordance with the Planning Act.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will now ask the Director of Planning and Building Services to begin with the presentations. Mr. Bermuno.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chair. Our planner, Lawrence Cook, will provide an overview of item number 1, and I see the applicants, planning consultants from Bosfu Planning are here, and they also have a presentation to provide council on the zoning bylaw amendment application.
Thank you, Lawrence. It's all yours.
Well, good evening, Deputy Mayor and members of council. The application in discussion is a zoning bylaw amendment located at 15370 Leslie Street. The purpose of the amendment is to permit a 33-story townhouse condominium units. As outlined in red, the subject lands are located west of Leslie Street and just north of the intersection of Leslie Street and Wellington Street East. And to the north is the approved residential subdivision, Shimvest Developments. And to the east is Leslie Street, Stormwater Management Pond, and the Smart Center Plaza. To the south is an approved site plan for the Salvation Army Church. And to the west is the existing Stewart Burnett Park. The proposed application will be reviewed for consistency with all applicable provincial, regional, and municipal policies as listed. Given council's recent approved comprehensive zoning bylaw, the application will be reviewed against the 6017 instead of the, as shown here, 221378. As outlined in red, the subject lands are designated as UR2, Urban Residential 2, within the OPA 73. The following are key policies within the UR2 designation. Townhouses are permitted, maximum building height of 6 stories or 20 meters. The density levels ranges from 35 to 50 units per residential hectares, and all future development must have no adverse impact to the existing ground or surface water, and they also need to be consistent with the approved urban design guidelines. As outlined in red, the subject lands are currently zoned UR2 exception zone. As noted earlier, the proposed application was submitted before the recent approved comprehensive zoning bylaw. As such, the naming convention R6 and the list of exceptions requested in the staff report still reflects the previous bylaw and not the new comprehensive zoning bylaw. As outlined in red, the subject land is, will be proposed to zone for an R6, which is a townhouse zoning. In addition to the proposed zoning amendment application, the applicant submitted a site plan application. The following are highlights of the proposed site plan application. We're looking at 4 blocks of 3-story townhouse units with 1 private road right in, right out onto Leslie Street, 9 visitors parking spaces. Each townhouse unit will have a parking space in the garage and 1 on the driveway. There's an existing pond will also be relocated to the westerly portion of the site with the pedestrian connections of trail network in between block A and D. Here's a quick visualization of what that looks like. 4 blocks of townhouse. In between block A and D is a pedestrian connection to the larger trail network with the relocation of the man-made pond to the westerly portion of the site. This is the proposed site, this is the proposed front elevation onto the proposed private road. 1-car garage, 3 stories in the height with the flat roof design. And here's the proposed rear elevation, walkout basement, 2 individual balconies on each floor. And this is the perspective given councilors here an idea of what the proposed streetscape may look like. So the application was circulated and first submission has returned and forwarded to the applicant. The following are key highlights from the circulation. Of course, staff will continue to review the applicability and the appropriateness of the zoning bylaw. The applicant will need to provide staff with the response to technical matters such as stormwater management, drainage, servicing, retaining walls, landscape plans, and natural heritage evaluation. Staff will continue to evaluate the proposed flat roof design and the overall urban design conformity. There is a barn swallow's nest in the middle of the subject lands as well. The region also has technical comments with vehicular access onto Leslie Street. The Conservation Authority also has raised concerns about the relocation of the man-made pond, more so about the method of the relocation. the Conservation Authority would like to see a surface level drainage versus piping it and having it underground and route it behind the townhouse blocks. The proposed site plan will be peer reviewed by Planning Partnership for Architectural Styles and Streetscape. And staff will continue to work with the applicant to address the comments made here tonight and as well from the circulation agencies. A comprehensive report with recommendations will be presented at a future general committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ask the applicant to step forward.
Evening, Deputy Mayor, members of Council. Thank you. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, members of Council. My name is Lewis Tinker. I'm a planner with the firm Bousfields, and I just wanted to take a few moments of your time to make a brief presentation. I realize that I may have quite a few slides that duplicate the town planner's presentation, so I'll move through quickly. You've just been provided with a quick overview of the development activity that's occurring along Leslie Street and within the surrounding area of the subject site. Obviously, you're seeing a variety of building forms and development typologies, including sort of low-rise singles and semis, townhouses, and also applications that are coming forward for apartment buildings up to, I think, 6 stories in the area. We certainly think that our proposed townhouse development provides for a diversity of housing options within this part of the town. Again, here is just an application map to show where you have ongoing development applications that are under review. And as I mentioned, just to the south of our site, closer to Wellington Street, is an application for 2 apartment buildings. Lawrence has taken you through some of the key policy mapping and context, so I won't repeat that. The underlying zoning being the general rural urban zoning 2. And again, here's the site plan. So just a reminder, we're proposing 4 individual blocks of townhouses, either a combination of 7 or 8 townhouses in each block, up to 3 stories high, with at least 2 parking spaces per unit, and an additional additional 9 visitor parking spaces at the west end of the site. That area will also provide for turnaround for fire and garbage, and there's also opportunities there for snow storage if required. As mentioned, there is an existing man-made pond that's located on the eastern half of the site today, and recognizing that there is an existing environmental protection area off to the west side of this site, the thought was to move that feature so it creates more of a contiguous feature that transcends beyond just our site, but lands to the north and to the west as well. You've seen some elevations here of the proposal. Going for a solid brick and sort of masonry approach. It's kind of like the architects are trying to achieve more of a sort of a brownstone kind of townhouse look and aesthetic. Certainly we've been provided with some comments through from planning and your urban design advisors as to ways to articulate the buildings in more detail, particularly as it relates to the frontages on Leslie Street and how it relates to Leslie Street. Ways in which to sort of de-emphasize the integral garages at grade, and some ideas about sort of twinning the garages to provide maybe more contiguous landscaping along the street as well for planting of trees and things like that. So we have started to kind of move along more in terms of design, and certainly we'll be looking to continue to evolve the design of the townhouses. As was mentioned, just to the north of the site is a strip of land, I understand it's owned by the town. It's planned to provide for a trail connection from Leslie Street into a wider trail connection to the lands to the north and to the west. And as part of our proposal, we're going to connect into that trail. It's just a quick view of the landscape plan. I don't profess to be an expert in these sustainability matters, but there are a number of sustainability features that will be incorporated into the design of the buildings. And just to finish off with what is, fairly sort of conceptual rendering of the proposed townhouses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll now ask members of the public to come forward and express any concerns or comments on this application. Seeing none, I will now ask if members of council have any questions of the applicant or town staff. Motion? Oh, Councillor Perry, sorry. Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the applicant.
What's his name?
How are you anticipating people get home from work? Is it going to be a right-in, right-out? Are they going to have to go through the Walmart street to get through?
As currently filed, it's a right-in, right-out configuration. I know that our transportation consultants are having ongoing discussions with the region to see if there are ways to, with some changes to the dimensions of the driveway, whether or not that could be, a full moves configuration rather than just right-in, right-out. We haven't resolved that situation yet.
Councillor?
And the thought process for the flat roofs, could you?
I think it was more about an aesthetic of a townhouse, and I mentioned the sort of historical, more sort of brownstone approach, which typically does not have a pitched roof in any way, and the flat roof could also provide some additional amenity. Outdoor amenity for homeowners, in addition to the amenity that's provided at grade and in the site as a whole.
I was actually hoping that you would say that it could be used as a deck on the third story. I think looking at the site, amenity space is an issue. So if you can give, your residents an opportunity to go sit outside on a patio, I think that's something that I would be in favor for. If I can't speak for everybody else around the table, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. With regards to the zoning, you've asked for a number of exceptions where there's a reduction from the original R6 minimums, things like the lot area, coverage, rear yard, so forth. Can you speak to why council should consider granting those exceptions? Because some of them are significant. It's almost a 50% reduction in what currently stands as the R6 standards.
Yeah. The site is constrained because of its dimensions, and I think that though having said that, there's still an opportunity through, particularly with respect to the amenity at grade, the rear yard setback is probably the most significant reduction that we're asking for. I think the typology, the urban nature of the type of form of development that we're proposing on the site, the idea to add additional amenity on the rooftop of the building, the commitment to provide the new pond and the environmental, add to the renaturalization on the western half of the site, all of those things add up to, the application requesting those reductions.
Thank you.
Seeing no more comments or questions, Mr. Bermuno, I think the next stage would be to put this on. So we have a recommendation before us. That the report be received and the a report outlining the recommendations and options at a future general committee. Could I have someone move this? Councillor Perry, seconded. Councillor Kim. All those in favor? I've been advised that we may want to have some conversation before us with council on the motion. My apologies. Councillor Maracas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, speaking of the right in, right out, there was concerns with the other development, the Polo Club, and the region came back to us with considerations on how they would look at configuring Leslie Street, and I'm wondering if they've taken this application into consideration when developing what they put forward for a suggestion for Leslie Street.
Mr. Ramuno.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. It's definitely, I don't think we've received final comments from the region, but we can certainly have that discussion with the applicant and the region. As council's aware, I guess not too long ago, we had a public meeting on the Polo application, and the solution there was to have a turnaround, a U-turn provision, and that is further south. And so the region was agreeable to that. The other option here is, I think, and we'll have that discussion with the region, there is a possibility to have that left turn movement further north at the intersection of, I guess it's State Farm Drive and the Shimvest property to the west. So there is that opportunity to have that left turn movement at the intersection just north of this property. But it's something we'll take back to the region and the applicant.
Councillor?
Thank you. That's it for now.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really just an initial comment, I guess, with regards to the, on page 5 of our report, the R6 exceptions. It has been noted in the report, and I also share the concerns that, there's a number of these items that are significantly reduced, the lot area per dwelling unit, the unobstructed distance between the buildings, the rear yard, and it gives a sense to me that it's going to be a little bit crammed. And so I think that, I'd like staff to look into that some more as they work through with the applicant. And then actually, a question through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, would the look of these townhomes be subject to our design review panel?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Chair, not necessarily. At this point, we're only taking heritage matters to our design review panel, but we do have our control architect, the planning partnership, that would be reviewing this application, as well as the formal site plan when that comes in at a later date. So there's still an opportunity to deal with the style of the townhomes and architectural detail. Yeah.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but I've heard a lot of comments about the flat-roofed townhomes on Wellington Street in between Leslie and Bayview. Not all of them flattering, and the initial look of these ones raises some of the same similar concerns, and so I wouldn't mind it actually being some sort of design review associated with it. I think that certainly want to see the best looking buildings as possible constructed here in Aurora.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I would like to say that was one of the most, one of the best presentations that I've ever heard. It was very calm and comprehensive. On page 2, could you explain, you mentioned that this is outside of the approved block plan of the, I don't remember seeing that in a report. So what exactly does that mean?
Mr. Bermuno, page 2.
just for clarification, I understand what it means, what outside of means, but I don't understand what the implications might be for this particular subdivision.
Mr. Ramuno.
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Chair. There really aren't any implications. Simply, we just identified that the 2C block plan that council dealt with, dealt with that 2C block plan back in 2012, 2013. This wasn't part of that original submission, but the lands are part of the 2C secondary plan area. So we have 2 or 3 sort of what we call non-participating landowners that weren't part of that submission 3-4 years ago. But the 2C secondary plan would govern these lands.
And the report does mention the barn swallow, as the presentation did, but it doesn't say what's going to be happening with it. Is it going to be relocated, or?
Mr. Ramuno.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, they'll be relocated. They'll need to work with the, under the ministry's regs, and it's really a question of during the nesting season they can't be removed. So they'll work with the Conservation Authority and in dealing with that matter.
Thank you. It's also mentioned on page 3 that a wetland is located on the north end of the site. I don't see it on our page 10. I don't see it as noted as an environmental area. Well, I don't see it noted anywhere on any of our...
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. The entire parcel is identified as a residential designation within our secondary plan, but through more detailed review, there is a environmental natural heritage system just to the north, and so that the western portion of this property, which includes that man-made lake and a portion of the heritage system, is part of this land, and that is why the development doesn't extend that far west. So it's something that we can consider through the rezoning application, whether we apply a separate zoning on that westerly portion or not. That's something that staff will consider moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Ramuno. Councillor.
Thank you. I think it could have been noted because I wasn't sure where it was. I thought it was closer to Leslie.
We can clarify that.
Look,
I've got it here.
That's right. So, yeah, I mean, the developed portion of the property is where the proposed townhouse blocks are. So the westerly portion, includes the pond, but I think a portion of that northwest quadrant of the subject lands may include part of that natural heritage feature that extends north.
thank you. You're a better man than I am because I can't tell that from page 9. I have the same concerns that Councillor Thompson has with the exceptions. They go from 40% all the way up to 55% ask. That's not acceptable to me. Actually, it's very unacceptable to me. And in the on page 6, under analysis, so the consideration of applications relative to the existing and future surrounding uses. I don't think this is compatible with what we've approved in the past. Would you comment on that?
Mr. Marino?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. Again, that is one of the our standard principles that we include in all our reports. Ensure that whenever we're dealing with a development application, that it's compatible and appropriate in the location and in the context of the surrounding land uses. I mean, to the south, we do have the Salvation Army facility. To the north, we have the Shimvest development, which immediately north includes a townhouse block and another mixed-use block. So there are a variety of uses to the north, different uses, and to the south of the property. And of course, to the west is our Stuart Burnett Park property. But it's something that we'll take under consideration with respect to, again, the official plan does permit the specific uses, does permit townhouse uses, even at a higher density that's being proposed here.
Thank you. Councillor?
I just have one more comment for now. The reduced rear yard setback to 4.4 meters. That's a very small area for the people who will be moving into these townhouses. And I know that, you know, they're going to be forewarned, but I think as a town, we have a responsibility to make sure that they have at least some backyard. I don't think these are going to be inexpensive homes.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just on a comment that Councillor Thompson made, I agree. I haven't heard a lot of flattering comments about those houses from on Wellington Street, west of Leslie. But I actually don't mind the look of these ones. But I'm happy to have it go to some sort of review or whatever as a comment. But I like the brownstone look. These look a bit more appealing than what was built on Wellington Street, but that's just a comment. I mean, obviously, I have the same sort of concerns with respect to the exceptions. Obviously, this is a pretty thin, narrow site from north to south, and so obviously you can see why they're asking for the the front yard setback and rear yard setback exceptions, because obviously to fit in 2 rows of houses, they might need some wiggle room there, but the lot area per dwelling unit is going down by over 100 meters square, and the lot coverage maximum is going to be more than doubled. And so if you're combining that with a rear yard and front yard reduction as well, I mean, I have the same concern as Councillor Gardner and Councillor Thompson, that this is going to be a fairly constrained site for the people who are going to be buying houses there. I mean, you know, we have these setbacks in place for a reason. They're not just there for fun. So it's there to make sure that we have, you know, good orderly development that gives, you know, the right scope and scale to any developments that the town has. So my main concerns, I think, are with the lot area per dwelling unit. I mean, it's just a massive, massive reduction, and the lot coverage as well. It's just going to be very tight on the site, and you know, I appreciate the work to move the pond. I appreciate the buffer zone. I'm not against the obviously the principle on this site. I think the architecture, the concept looks fine. I just think that we really need to take a look at increasing the lot area per dwelling unit and reducing the lot coverage, in my opinion. I'm gonna have a hard time moving forward with this past a general committee meeting if those concerns aren't addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. We've discussed the exception requests for the property, and my question to you would be, if, you know, when I look at the diagrams and the sizings, I do admit that there are physical constraints to the land, and so through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Ramuno, how might the townhomes look if they were all within, if no exceptions were requested, other than the townhouse units being smaller? Would it even be marketable without the exceptions requested?
Mr. Ramuno, can you
Sure,
give us an overview what you might think it looked like?
Sure. Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. I mean, no question, it's a tight site because I think the entire frontage or the depth is, you know, 50 meters. And so you've got to try and locate a private road, and you've got blocks on either side. No question, it's tight. With respect to the exceptions, our parent R6 zone, and Lawrence can jump in if I've got it wrong, really applies to sort of, that's our street townhousing standards. So for condominium townhouse developments, we do typically vary and reduce some of the provisions. Now, what they're asking for, and I've heard comments from council, maybe a bit much. It is a little tight. Likely, if we were to hold them to the the front yard and the rear yard, they'd probably lose a block, because I think the building envelopes are relatively small, as they are now. But it's something that we'll take back and see if they can somehow redesign the blocks, and it may mean losing some units to see if they can gain some space with respect to providing additional rear yard space. But again, having said that, it may not be necessary to have the entire 7.5 meter rear yard in this type of situation. But again, it's something that we've heard a comment, and we'll certainly sit down with the applicant and see how it can be redesigned.
If the builder can do, give a little bit here or there, that's great. I'm happy to move forward to GC with this myself. I understand that it doesn't give that much wiggle room, but I think in this market, and I'm sure future markets, I think people value the building envelope more than the physical surroundings. My second comment is, I think it's what's been mentioned. I'm really happy that Councillor Thompson was brave enough to talk about the aesthetics, because I know in the last couple of public planning meetings where I mentioned aesthetics, I felt like I was a flag bearer for HGTV. But I think, as individuals, as municipalities and companies, we all, what's called, I guess, a brand. And one of my regrets with these public planning meetings is that in the first 3 years I didn't speak up more in terms of some of the homes that have been built over the last 3 years. It's far from aesthetically pleasing, and especially when they're facing major arteries like Wellington or Leslie or Yonge. And I look at some of the neighborhoods in King or parts of Markham, they look pretty upscale. And a lot of residents here feel that we have an upscale, not to be snooty or anything like that, but we live in an upscale community, and the buildings should reflect that. And there's too many homes that are in the major arteries, and certainly inside as well, that don't reflect, I guess, the Aurora brand. And so it'd be nice to have, it's brownstone, it'd be nice to have some stone coverage. And certainly Councillor Thompson and I think it was Councillor Tom who mentioned about the flat roofing, and Councillor Pires. So it'd be nice to have something timeless, or that's not going to wear away 7-10 years from now, especially when it's facing Leslie and people can see the structure. So those are my two comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. And for a second time, Councillor Perry.
By no means first of all, I think, just so everybody's on the same page, on page 9, and it is difficult to see, you can see the Kettle Lake being, let's say, on the second part of the first half of Leslie Street, and that's going to get moved almost beside the house on the eastern side of on the western side of the property. So just so that everybody is on the same page, because I think there was a little bit of confusion there. By no means would I say that this is a tragedy of a development. I think there are some concerns, granted, with the size and scope of the building and the variations that people are looking for here. But to Councillor Kim's point, and to Councillor Gartner's point as well, these homes aren't going to be inexpensive. Nothing in Aurora is inexpensive, but not all homes are single detached homes, and we have to do our best at providing things that it gets harder and harder, but for the average person to afford in Aurora. And I think understanding the site constraints here, understanding that there might be some amenities on the rooftops, I'd be okay at looking at smaller rear yard setbacks, also because there's a connection to what will be a very large nature reserve that people are going to be able to walk through and go through. So if I were to think of myself living in a place like this, you know, if I have friends over, sit out on the patio on the roof, you know, barbecue in the backyard, that's almost equivalent to having a larger backyard, in my opinion. But then if I needed to get away from the amount of people who are going to be around, I think it's easy to take a walk into the nature reserve once it's up and running and built. I agree that the site is tight. I agree that, you know, we're maybe putting in more people than I think we would want to see in there, but it reminds me a lot of the Daniels, the two Daniels developments that were for, they called them starter homes. Much smaller units, stacked townhomes in those situations. These are not stacked, they're going to be side by side, but I think there's a similarity there. Do I think they'll be more expensive? Without a doubt, definitely, but I think everything's gotten more expensive in the last 3 years. So we'll just have to, I don't have any major concerns with this one, but I do think that there's some additional work to do.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Second time.
Thank you, and I mean, it's council's decision, but people like to use their backyards and barbecue and have friends. It works out to 14.5 feet. So it's not tiny, but it's pretty small. Mr. Muno, I have some concerns with respect to the pond, which is actually a stormwater management pond. It says on page 2 that drainage from the storm sewer from Leslie and the property to the south flows directly into the existing man-made pond. Well, man-made pond, it's a stormwater management pond. So, and there was a comment about how that was going to be moved to the back, and the drainage and undergrounding and et cetera. So could you just speak more to that? And is it Lake Simcoe that's going to be in charge of that if we allow this?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, and as we've heard, the applicant is proposing to relocate the pond from its existing location further west and change the drainage, really just moving it further west. So we're going to rely on the Conservation Authority's comments. We don't have their final comments. They have issued their preliminary comments. They've raised some questions. The applicant has submitted their stormwater management plan, so before we bring this back to council, we'll ensure that we have a final comment from the Conservation Authority with respect to their position on relocating the pond and how the stormwater is going to be handled on site.
Councillor?
Thank you. So in fact, council really has no control over that part. With respect to parking, I mean, it often happens that, I know that north of here, there's parking, one car on the driveway and then garage. And as it often happens, the garages are being used for storage, etc. So the cars are spilling over onto the street, and it's really a crowded street. We've had lots of complaints about all of the streets north of us. So how wide is the street going to be in this subdivision? Will there be room for people to park on the street, or at least on one side of the street?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, at this point, I think the private road is really just a minimum. I think it's 6.5 meter, just sufficient for a fire route and two-way traffic, but no parking on the private road. But the visitor parking is provided. 9 spaces is provided on site at the end of the private road. So, as you mentioned, two parking spots per unit plus the 9 additional parking spaces.
Councillor?
I've seen how this works in reality, and in reality, people often don't use their garages for parking, and they park on the street, and if there's no opportunity for anybody to park on the street and 9 visitor spots, you know, what happens at Christmas time? Where are people going to go? Are they going to park on Leslie? So to me, that's really concerning, and the people who are going to live there can't speak for themselves yet. So I think there's going to be a lot of complaints on that. And the last question is about the trees. If I look on page 13, so 60 trees are going to be replanted. It looks to me from the drawing like that there's going to be a tree in front of every house, or what are those circles in front of the homes?
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if they're showing planting trees, you know, in front of the units, but they do indicate that 60 trees are to be removed and 82 replanted. I can ask Lawrence if they're proposing to have some trees within the front yards. But again, this is a matter that, you know, as we move forward, we'll see comments from our Parks and Rec department with respect to entering into a you know, future tree compensation plan to ensure that whatever trees are removed will you know, we'll get those replanted in appropriate locations, depending on what the Conservation Authority says as well with respect to the relocation of the pond. There may be some replanting around the relocated pond, but it's something that we'll certainly address when we come back.
Thank you, and I got that backwards. 60 trees removed and 82 planted. It didn't look like in any of the things that were on the screen, there didn't look like there was a possibility for any trees in front of the homes. But I think that the circles as they're shown usually indicate trees. So I don't know, it's going to be pretty...
So through you, Deputy Mayor, looking at the landscape plan, there is trees being proposed in front of the units, and majority of the replanting will be on the westerly portion of the lands where the ponds are.
Thank you. It doesn't look to me like there's room to plant those trees, and they won't live if there's not room. And if it's just a collection of townhomes without any kind of green, without any kind of vegetation, I don't think it's going to look as good as we would like it to look.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call a vote on this. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries, Madam Clerk. Thank you very much. We'll go to our second item tonight. Is Lawrence going to be doing... Oh, well, thank you. Caitlin Grubb. Caitlin is the first name.
So Caitlin Grubb will be providing Caitlin is our new planner. She's been with us for a number of months, but she hasn't been before council at a public meeting session, so this is her first presentation. Again, as I said, she's been with us for a number of months, so she'll be providing the presentation on the Christian Seniors application. And Ms. Joan McIntyre is with Malone Givens, and she'll be speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Welcome, Caitlin, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor and members of council, the next application is an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for the subject lands located at 440, 460, 480, and 500 William Graham Drive. The main purpose of the amendments is to permit a maximum building height of 7 stories, up to a maximum of 28 meters, and to include assisted living units as a permitted use. The subject lands are located just north of the previous application we were looking at. They're on the southwest corner of Leslie Street and William Graham Drive, north of Wellington. To the north is a residential townhouse development that's currently under construction. To the east is vacant, future phases of the Christian Seniors apartment housing. To the south is open space and valley lands. And to the west is phase 1 of the Christian Seniors apartment housing, which is currently under construction right now. So a bit of background. A zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted in November 2016, and it requested to add assisted living units as a permitted use and to increase the maximum building height from 20 to 26 meters within the maximum permitted height of 6 stories. An information report was brought forward at public planning on January 25th, 2017. Since that time, the applicant has determined that they want to further increase the building height from what was originally requested. And this further increase triggered the need for an official plan amendment, which the applicant submitted an application in May 2017. And both the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications are being brought forward together in this report. So the proposed applications will be reviewed for consistencies with the listed provincial, regional, and municipal policies. And again, as Lawrence mentioned, given that Council recently approved the comprehensive zoning bylaw, the application will be reviewed against the new bylaw rather than the listed 2213-78 bylaw. The property outlined in red, it is designated UR2, Urban Residential 2, in the 2C Secondary Plan, OPA 73. And the proposed official plan amendment is to amend the maximum building height policy of the UR2 designation to permit a maximum building height of 7 stories or 28 meters, whichever is less. And onto zoning, you can see outlined in red, the properties, subject properties are zoned RA3 residential apartment -14 and RA3-15 exception zones. And the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, as noted earlier, was previously submitted before the comprehensive zoning bylaw was passed, and so the naming conventions RA3-14 and RA3-15 still reflect what's in the old bylaw. And just a quick summary of the zoning amendment requests. There's a more detailed list in the report, but they include to increase the maximum permitted height to 7 stories or 28 meters, to add assisted living units as a permitted use, and through that reducing the number of apartment units from 125 to 70 units in the RA3-14 zone, and from 100 to 76 units in the RA3-15 zone. As well, reduce the minimum landscape buffer from 7.5 meters to 4 meters, to amend the lot coverage provisions, and temporary relief from the requirement to provide a minimum of 8% of parking spaces below grade. Here you can see the proposed site plan. To the far left is phase 1. 1A is, I believe, almost finished. 1B is under construction right now. The orange building is phase 2, and the building to the right, the third building, is phase 3. And subsequent to the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment process, the development of the lands will be subject to a site plan application process and building permit process as well. And this is a cross-section of the building showing the different breakdown. So the blue floors are independent living units. The green floors are related to the assisted living units, and the floors shown in yellow are related to amenity space. The first submission has been circulated to internal and external agencies. The applications will be assessed for compatibility and appropriateness of the proposed amendments, and the region has confirmed that the official plan amendment is exempt from regional approval. and staff will continue to work with the applicant to address any comments from the circulation agencies, any comments from tonight's public meeting, and a comprehensive report with recommendations will be brought forward to a future general committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. I would now ask the applicant to come forward.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and members of council. My name is Joan McIntyre from Malone Given Parsons, and as Caitlin mentioned, this is the second time this development has come forward to you this year. I'll try to be quick going through the slides because there is some repetition. The York Region Christian Seniors is a nonprofit organization who has a board of directors that has managed the approvals and construction of the first phase, well, the approvals of the entire development already. They're already zoned, and the construction of the first phase of development. Their goal is to provide assisted living, or not assisted, affordable living for seniors 65 plus, and the intent of adding the assisted living units to the apartments was to allow people to stay in place longer in case one of their spouses was sick. There'd be care for them within the same building. Phase 1 is already, Phase 1A is already occupied, and I had a tour of it about 2 months ago. And Phase 1B is under construction, and that's the second half of the building, so that's on the left. Phase 2 and 3 will have approximately 250 units, apartment-style units in there, and the total number of units is 400. The zoning bylaw currently permits up to 480 apartment units, but the I&I work for allocation for servicing through the Aurora 2C Landowners Group has given this group 403, the equivalent of 403 apartment units. These are the lands and the original zoning application Caitlin already described. This is the cross-section with the height increase, and the topography and the way you measure topography, I'm sure you've seen this already, is the average of the height around the entire building. And with the almost 5-meter fall from front to back, it almost adds another floor. This shows the distance between the units that are under construction and the closest corner of the apartment buildings. The buildings are set back along the southern boundary of the site, further back from the street. This table shows the number of units that were approved in the zoning bylaw that's in effect. There were 300 to 480 residential units. We took into account the units that were actually built in Phase 1 and made some adjustments to allow for flexibility in the number of units in Phase 2 and 3, and we've ended up with slightly less than the 480 units. We've also shown some assisted living units in Phase 2. They'd like to reserve the opportunity for assisted living in Phase 3 should the Phase 2 be successful. So we've allowed some units in there. The assisted living units are considered as institutional units, and therefore allocation from the region and the town isn't required for those. In addition, a change to the zoning bylaw Caitlin mentioned was to an adjustment in lot coverage, and this is just to adjust the split between the lots. The ground floor area remains relatively similar. One of the buildings in the Phase 3 building was pulled back from the Phase 2 building, reducing its coverage on site. These are the amendments. We wanted clarification on the associated uses with the assisted living. Adult daycare center for drop-off for outside seniors who may have Alzheimer's is one of the options they would like to, or one of the opportunities they'd like to provide within the building. Office space for healthcare providers such as doctors, dentists, denturists, massage, chiropractic visitors, tuck shop for residents, and the gathering hall and meeting rooms on several floors, which would service the central building will service the two outlying buildings for a lot of the larger functions. This outlines the underground parking garage as shown in our current plans, and they're identified in purple. There'll be underground linkages in between the three buildings as well, connecting them for the winter. The reason they're asking for some leeway in the 80% underground parking is they will be achieving the 80% underground parking on a site-wide basis, but the logistics of constructing the garages in phases may result in a need for a bit more above-ground parking at some point in the staging of the full development. Since the number of residential units aren't increasing, we don't anticipate that there should be any impacts to the surrounding roads from a traffic perspective. And in conclusion, we now need an OPA due to further thinking on the part of the board. And it's not a significant change to the plan. Most of it's already been approved. The outside of the building isn't going to change. It's going to be 3 meters taller, and it's set back further from the street. So there should be little or no visual impact on the surrounding lands. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McIntyre. I'm looking, normally we would open it up for the public, but we don't have any public here. So we will close that section. Are there any questions from council to the applicant? Is that what we do next? Yes. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. Just to clarify something you said, the assisted living will be to accommodate people that are already here and may need to move to an assisted unit. So it's aging in place.
The goal is aging in place. I can't say if they would limit it to only people that are currently residents of the building, but with full build out of the building, there will be a lot of residents. The units are quite large, so up to 1,200, 1,300 square feet, so it will accommodate couples. It's much larger than you normally see for seniors. I think this is the third council I've been on where this has come before us, and the word affordable has never been mentioned with respect to this. I don't know if it's affordable. It's a non-profit.
Do you have any idea what the assisted living units will, are they going to be purchased or rented?
It's a life lease, and I'm not sure how that works. It's on their website, and unfortunately nobody has come from the seniors board today. But I could provide more information on that. The goal is to make it more affordable for people to stay within Aurora.
Thank you. I would like a definition of what more affordable means. Thank you. And that's all.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. In your presentation, you showed a picture of the existing building that's there
Yes.
now, what's under construction. Can you just confirm whether it's 6 stories or not?
It is 6 stories. It looks
Thank
like
you.
7 from the back because of the drop in
But from
the grade.
But from the front access, it's 6 stories.
From the front, it's 6, yes.
Thank
So
you.
you have other examples of that in town where the topography has resulted in the building looking taller from the other side.
We're quite familiar with that, for sure.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. McIntyre, for presenting. If I'm not mistaken, if you can clarify, are the partners in this part of the Salvation Army
Through you,
group?
Ms. McIntyre?
Mr.
Do
Chair.
you know that?
No, they're not. They're a group of Dutch people, and Dutch Christian organization. They don't limit people living there to any faith.
Yep.
It's they seem to have a very community-minded approach to providing services for their people.
Okay, thank you. You verified, so I can answer Councillor Gardner's question. I did speak with a couple of people who were senior involved in this, and so essentially it's 400,000 to for the obligation or to have the obligation of a unit. And should you decide to sell it, you get the $400,000 back. So in this day and age, when seniors can sell their bungalow for $1 million plus, and you can deposit $400,000, and you just pay the monthly maintenance fees, seems pretty reasonable. And so they use the $400,000 to help with the building, the construction of the. So it's so the principals are not there to make money off of this whatsoever. It's just I know there are a couple of churches involved, and one of the senior principals I forget which church, but that's the cost structure of and what is deemed affordable, I guess. I have nothing, no comments regarding the development other than I'm pleased with it. It looks great. I think the first stage went well, and I hope the next stages do equally as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate the Lease for Life. I might just make a comment. I am currently looking for my mother-in-law, and it's been a process for a few years. What you have is affordable. You know, I get quote after quote for assisted living. Starts at $4,100. I got one yesterday, $4,700 plus. It's like an a la carte what you need for assisted medication, personal care and stuff. $1,700. So we're talking $6,400, and it's a studio. And that's a profit, made for profit organization. And what you're doing is a huge stark contrast. That they could sell their condo currently, invest it, and then get that principal back and just pay a maintenance. That is incredible. And the size,
huge,
at 1,200,
yeah,
is phenomenal, because most of the ones I'm looking at are 8, 9 for a bedroom. So
yep.
I really want to impress the difference of what you see. And I've been to 15 in our immediate area, and there's nothing like what you have. Of course, when I called, there was none available.
No, they sold out.
So that doesn't help right now, but I can tell you it's a real challenge.
Yes.
So what you're doing is absolutely phenomenal, or the group that you're representing.
Group is doing, yes.
Yeah. And I was there for the groundbreaking and understood most of all this. They're in several communities. A community that has this sort of investment from this group is a blessing.
Yes.
So I'm all in favor. The setbacks that you have are just it's country living and not you know, it's all contained. It's not we're not looking at any setbacks or anything along those lines on neighborhoods or anything along those lines. There are no impacts whatsoever. So this is a real good thing. Are there any other questions to the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I'll close this section, and we will now just have it for council. We'll put the recommendation on to the floor. Could I have someone move it and a seconder, please? Councillor Kim, seconded. Councillor Maracas, thank you. Questions? And Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I appreciate your comments and Councillor Kim's. Although I'm sure that whatever the base price is, the medications, etc., that the extra care that's needed will also be charged. But you know, we have a lot of people in this community that well, you mentioned it, $400,000 is not affordable. And I think if we grant 7 stories, I'm not opposed to 7 stories, that some of these units should be subsidized units, because we have a lot of units in town for very rich people or people who have property, but there are a lot of people in this town that are going to need help, and we're not providing any units for them. So the 7th floor is a bonus floor. I think we should impose some bonusing on it. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, the comment was that that this would come under our new bylaw. I thought that planning applications that were already in this system stayed under our older bylaw.
Mr. Romano?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as we mentioned last night, I think we had about 20 zoning bylaw amendment applications that we're currently processing that haven't been finalized by council, and they were submitted under the old bylaw. Last night, council rescinded the old bylaw, passed a new comprehensive bylaw. So I think our reference to that is moving forward in considering these applications, we will try and apply the new bylaw in the new zone standards and the new zone classifications just moving forward. I don't believe, especially in the case like this evening, the two applications this evening, there was a significant change in the proposed zoning from the old bylaw to the new bylaw. It was really just updating definitions and standards and just harmonizing the zoning. So I don't believe there are going to be any significant changes. But just moving forward, you're going to hear that from us. That we've had current applications that have been submitted under the old bylaw, and so the draft bylaws that were submitted by the applicants reference the old bylaw. So as we move forward and bring a new bylaw forward for council's final consideration, the new zoning categories and standards will be reflective of the new bylaw as approved by council last night.
Thank you, Mr. Romano.
But in fact, this was before us in January 2017, and we approved a zoning bylaw amendment. This council approved a zoning bylaw amendment. Well, I'm looking at page 2.
Mr. Chair, we had a public meeting. So they submitted the zoning application. We had a public meeting. The applicants went back and reconsidered, and that's when they, considered that, their new approach was to add additional assisted care living units. So they decided to come forward with an OP to go that extra story, the full 7th story. So there's no final consideration of that original zoning bylaw in January. They revised their application, and there was a need for an OPA for that increase of height from 6 to 7 stories.
Councillor?
Thank you. I see that I'm wrong on that, but the fact remains that this is already in the system and should be under the old zoning bylaw. I don't know what the difference is, but if we have a rule, we should follow the rule, no matter who the applicant is. Could you speak to, on page 5, it's with respect to the regional OPA and the number of units?
Mr. Romano?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. Page 5. Sorry, Councillor Gardner, are you referring to the 50 residents and jobs combined, or?
Yes, I am. The paragraph above that speaks to changing the, I guess would be more an apartment unit to an assisted living unit.
Go ahead, please.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. So it would still conform with the our 2C secondary plan minimum density policy provision of 50 residents and jobs per hectare, which is also a policy of the regional plan and the provincial plan. So that is that minimum. It's a minimum requirement. So the development so far that council approved within the 2C secondary plan, all those subdivisions in this application met that minimum 50 requirement. So in this instance, what their proposal is, they're reducing the number of sort of full apartment units slightly, but they're adding additional units, which they're calling assisted living units. So it is still in keeping with the those density provisions in both the regional and provincial plans.
Thank you. Councillor?
The context is that this would require a change to the minimum number of apartment units required on the lands per the table below.
Mr. Romano, did you follow that? What page was that table?
I'm on, well, the table is on page 6, but I'm on page 5 in the middle. And it says if we approve this, it will require change to the minimum number of apartment units required. The word is required, and I think there's a difference between an apartment unit and an assisted care unit because they don't have kitchens. So I don't really understand how this would follow the OP if they require a minimum number of apartment units.
Go ahead.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, so the 50-unit requirement is a provincial regional standard, and it's applied over the entire secondary plan area, the 2C secondary plan area. So as it stands, even with this development and this proposed change, they would still meet the 2C area. Greenfield area does meet that 50 minimum, even with this change. Now, there is a question of, because again, that talks about 50 residents, so these assisted living care units, include residents. So if you take it based on the number of people that will ultimately be living here, it'll actually increase it because we are seeing additional units combined between the formal apartment units and the assisted living care units. But it is a minimum, and the 2C secondary plan met that minimum, and even with this proposed development, it won't be below that minimum. They'll actually add additional people living in this development.
Councillor?
And yet this is going to need an institutional designation, so that's a whole different thing than residential units. So I'm having trouble with the report. I think it's wonderful what the developer is doing. I still stick to the point that it's bonusing, and there should be some real affordable units for people who can't afford $400,000 to put in. And I think there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors going on here with the from what I can see on page 5, it just doesn't make sense to me, especially as this is going to be changed to institutional. So I'm having trouble with this application as it stands.
I'm going to ask if there is a change to institutional on this.
Mr. Chair, again, my apologies, just so I'm clear. The existing zoning is the apartment, the RA3 apartment zone that council approved a number of years ago to permit the 4 buildings. They're not seeking a rezone to an institutional use. It's a site-specific change to add assisted living units within the existing buildings and within the existing apartment zone, again, to provide that aging and care model that they're proposing. So some of these buildings will have a combination of the leased life apartment dwelling units, and on other floors you'll have assisted care living units and perhaps even extended care units.
Thank you, Mr. Ramuno. Councillor, I'm going to allow others to move on if you're okay. Go ahead.
I'm referencing the institutional designation because that was presented by the applicant at the podium. It's not in our report, but that is what was said by the applicant. So that may need some clarification.
Mr. Ramuno, can you add some clarification to
Certainly.
this?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, if I can refer council to, I guess the best table is figure 3, our existing zoning bylaw. So there is an existing institutional zone portion, which is not subject to this application. It's that portion immediately west of Leslie Street, which is owned by the York Region Seniors Christians Organization, and that was originally intended for an institutional assisted living building, and that is one of their future phases and future plans. They haven't brought forward a site plan for that, but within the area subject to this application, the 2 RA3 zones, they are then going to incorporate some of those assisted living units within those buildings. But the property does contain that institutional block. It's not subject to this application, but it's a future phase, and that was always intended from the original days of the application back in 2013 to house a full-blown, assisted living building.
Thank you, Mr. Bermuno, and I appreciate the clarification on that. I do want to just mention, if I can, Councillor Gardner, the $400,000, of course, is put forward and it returned once you leave. So you are putting money forward, but that principal is given back. If I understood the explanation, and I'm looking at the applicant. So to get first, it's like that old story: you can be a millionaire and never pay taxes. First, get $1 million. In this situation, $400,000 may not be available to anyone unless they are a current homeowner. I appreciate that. But it's a good investment in the scheme of things, and I explained we would jump at this for what we're talking about. And assisted living is basically escorting people to their dinner and making sure they're checked in on a periodic. It's a la carte. It's not an onerous care, and a profit-making charges for these at an incredible price. However, I do believe that it would be far less in the model that is going to be presented, and I'm quite confident. I'm going to ask Councillor Kim and then Councillor Maracas.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I can appreciate Councillor Gardner's concerns about $400,000 not being cheap enough, but when similar units are going for between $550 and $700, I would say $400 is a pretty good deal. And with regards to bonusing, we have to keep in mind that this is not for profit, meaning that's the bare bones. We're actually being told what their costs are. So to ask for bonusing on top of a not-profit $400,000, I'm not sure how much more we can squeeze out. So I just wanted to remind Council of that.
Councillor Maracas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Bermuno. Mr. Bermuno, you happened to say something while Councillor Gardner was speaking that kind of just jumped at me. And so Phase 4 is supposed to be a completely assisted living? If that's the case, does that mean that now that they've moved some of the assisted living, does that mean that Phase 4 will come back to us with changes proposed in it, and it won't be a fully, completely assisted living building?
Mr. Bermuno, we're talking about assisted living.
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. No, my discussions with the applicant is they're still planning on having that future institutional block, building that at a later date, and that their plan was always to have that as a assisted living building, a dedicated assisted living building.
And if I could, I would imagine it would graduate into aging in care to memory care, which is a far more intense care when you're dealing with that. So it may be that where there'd be more medical and more physical and mental challenges than in other assisted, because it's graduated. And I'm looking at the applicant, and I think we could really, I mean, I understand it because I'm going through this. If we were to just come in and rent, which would be the maintenance costs, and keep my mother-in-law's home, we would welcome that. And effectively what you're doing is you're just using that mortgage, so you're still maintaining that and going in and renting at an affordable rate. So like I said, it's like no other model that we've experienced, and it doesn't surprise me that it's sold out. If there are no other, Councillor Maracas, I'm sorry I interrupted you. You still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was just going to say I'm in favor of the application. I just that popped into my head. I just wanted to know if we were going to be looking at something down the road that might be some changes, but I just thought I'd get that out there because it popped into my head when Councillor Gardner was speaking. But I just wanted to make a comment that I know that I'm usually pretty strict and stand by our height requirement, and I know that this is looking to exceed that. But I've always said that if there's a benefit to the community, I'm all in favor of allowing an amendment. And I do feel that this application is a benefit to our community and does provide our community with something that is dearly needed. So I'm in full support of moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Once, I think. Did you want to speak again, Councillor Gardner? Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to speak on behalf of all those people who live in Aurora who would not be able to take advantage of this. There's going to be a crisis in affordable living for seniors. It's already started. No, I can say this.
Councillor Gardner, I'll just address a point of order, and then we'll go. Councillor Perry.
My only question is, can we deal with the matter at hand where, you know, we're talking about zoning bylaw amendments. We're not talking about affordable housing or our mother-in-laws. We're talking about zoning bylaw amendments.
Thank you, Councillor.
Moving this forward.
I will rule in favor, and unfortunately, I was the one that extended
That's fine.
the scope.
We are talking about bonusing. We are talking about not-for-profit, but certainly the principals would not be doing this if there was not money to be made in this. So not-for-profit doesn't mean that there isn't profit to be made. Otherwise, why would anyone do this? We are talking about bonusing. We are giving away a floor that is outside of our OPA. I think I'm very disappointed in this council that we are at least not trying to do something for a certain segment of our community. And bonusing, if you look at the Planning Act, I'm sure Mr. Ramuno can confirm this, bonusing is granted in exchange for something that would benefit the town. And I don't think by putting more units in place, that's a benefit to this particular organization. I don't think you can call that a benefit to the community. A benefit to the community would be looking for some affordable housing, and I know some people at this table have spoken about that in the past. Here's a chance to put your money where your mouth is.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other further comments? Seeing none, we'll put this to a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Madam Clerk?
So this is a recorded vote on planning application number 2 for tonight, application for zoning bylaw amendment. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Application for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, York Region Christian Seniors Home, Inc. Councillor Abel?
Yes.
Councillor Thompson? Yes. Councillor Thompson votes yes. Councillor Marakis? Yes. Councillor Marakis votes yes. Mayor Dawes absent. Councillor Perry? Yes. Councillor Perry votes yes. Councillor Kim? Yes. Councillor Kim votes yes. Councillor Humphreys? Yes. Councillor Humphreys votes yes. Councillor Gardner? Votes no. Councillor Gardner votes no. That carries.
Thank you. We will now move to the confirming bylaw. Could I have someone put that forward, please? Councillor Perry, Councillor Humphreys. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. A motion for adjournment. Councillor Thompson, seconded. Councillor Kim. All in favor? Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, staff. Thank you, applicant. Thank you, Madam Clerk.